Welcome to First Sleep Aid, calm stories to help you unwind, learn, and fall asleep. From true crime to curious facts and thoughtful ideas, always softly spoken. Subscribe now and take a deep breath. You're in good hands.
So think about a seemingly normal Sunday morning. You know, the kind of quiet that settles over a place, especially in the summertime.
Yeah, like Palo Alto, California back in 1971. It had that vibe.
Exactly. That kind of stillness. A university town, Stanford nearby, but still pretty laid back for the era, right?
Totally. You wouldn't expect anything too out of the ordinary to kick off there.
But that peace, it got disrupted pretty dramatically.
Right. Imagine looking out your window and seeing actual police cars rolling up to different houses.
Yeah, and starting to arrest these young men, students mostly.
Full procedure, too.
Yeah.
Handcuffs, searching them, reading them their rights.
The charges sounded serious. Armed robbery, assault, conspiracy even.
Neighbors must have been completely baffled. Shocked, really.
Absolutely shocking. But here's the twist. The part that makes it so much more than just a police action.
Mm-hmm.
None of those crimes actually happened.
They were completely fabricated.
These arrests were staged. All part of this psychological study happening right there at Stanford.
Those young men being hauled away. They were volunteers. They'd answered an ad.
A flyer on campus, basically, offering $15 a day.
$15 a day, yeah. For what they thought would be a 2-week simulation of prison life.
But, I mean, could they have possibly known what that really meant?
Probably not. I mean, getting stripped of your name, just being a number, locked in these makeshift cells in a university basement.
And the other volunteers, their peers, suddenly they're guards, given uniforms, batons, those mirrored sunglasses.
Yeah, the sunglasses. And their job, just maintain order. Very vague.
You know, it wasn't set up with, malice intended. Not explicitly, anyway. It came from a really big question.
A fundamental one for psychology, right?
Yeah. What makes good people, or seemingly good people, do bad things? Evil things, even.
And the psychologist behind it all, Philip Zimbardo, he had this strong belief
What was that?
that the answer wasn't necessarily deep inside the person, their character. It was more about the power of the situation.
And context they're put in.
Exactly. The situation itself.
So this whole experiment, this simulated prison, it was supposed to run for 2 weeks.
But it got shut down dramatically after only 6 days.
6 days. Yet the impact, it's still being debated decades later, isn't it?
Absolutely. It raised huge questions about, human nature, how we study ourselves, and maybe most importantly, the ethical lines.
The lines you just don't cross in research.
Yeah. And at the heart of it all was Philip Zimbardo himself.
Right. To really understand this Stanford Prison Experiment, you kind of have to understand him, his background, what drove his interest in social dynamics.
His early life was a world away from Stanford, actually. He grew up in the South Bronx.
In the 1930s, right?
Yeah, a really dense working-class area. And just living there, he said, was like a constant lesson.
A lesson in what?
In power dynamics, watching how things played out on the streets, in the schools. Those kind of unspoken social hierarchies.
Who got the influence, how they use it?
Exactly. As a son of Sicilian immigrants, he learned to read those currents, always observing.
And those early observations, they seem to have stuck with him.
Definitely. By the time he got into academia, Brooklyn College, then Yale, he was already leaning towards an idea that was a bit different from the mainstream psychology of the time.
Which was?
He started seeing behavior less as something driven purely from inside, like Freudian ideas suggested, and more as a response to the outside world.
So the roles were given, the expectations, the context.
Precisely. The invisible rules of the situation.
And this was happening during a really interesting time for psychology as a field, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Freudian theories were being challenged. Behaviorism was offering a scientific approach, focusing on observable stimulus response, but maybe missing some human complexity.
And social psychology was really starting to carve out its own space.
Right. Trying to bridge that gap, understand individuals within their social worlds.
And Zimbardo's questions, they seem really rooted in moral concerns.
Deeply moral. Why do people conform? When does just following orders become harmful? Where's that line between being civil and, being cruel?
These weren't just abstract puzzles for him.
No, they felt like core questions about being human.
And he wasn't thinking in a vacuum, right? The world events at the time must have played a huge role.
Massively. World War II, the Holocaust, the Nuremberg trials. These forced everyone, especially psychologists, to confront humanity's capacity for cruelty under certain conditions.
Which leads us to Milgram's studies.
Exactly. Stanley Milgram at Yale in the early 60s, his obedience experiments were groundbreaking
Yeah.
and deeply disturbing.
Those were the ones with the electric shocks.
Yeah, participants thought they were giving increasingly painful shocks to someone else as part of a learning experiment.
And the scary finding was that most people kept going.
They did, even when it sounded like the person was in agony. It powerfully suggested people obey authority figures, sometimes even against their own judgment.
Zimbardo was impressed by Milgram, but he had a different angle, didn't he?
He did. He admired Milgram's work, saw its power. But he wondered, what if the authority wasn't some guy in a lab coat telling you what to do?
What if it just emerged?
Yeah. What if it grew out of the situation itself? From the group? Could the structure alone, the roles, the uniforms, the labels, be enough to spark oppressive behavior without direct orders?
So he wasn't just testing obedience to commands. He wanted to build a whole miniature world.
Exactly, a system, a microcosm designed to see if cruelty could emerge almost naturally, just from the roles and expectations, not explicit instructions.
A simulation meant to provoke behavior.
Right, and he knew he needed specific ingredients for this.
Like what?
Well, first, a setting. It had to feel believable, contained, almost like its own little reality.
Okay.
Second, the participants. They had to seem normal, psychologically stable, average Joes.
Not people prone to aggression or anything.
Right. Third, you had to strip away their individuality somehow and then clearly assign them these different roles.
Guard or prisoner.
Guard or prisoner. And fourth, and this is crucial, Zimbardo put himself right in the middle of it.
Not just watching from behind a mirror.
No. He took on the role of prison superintendent. He was part of the system he created.
Wow. So he saw the experiment as, what, a mirror?
Yeah, holding up a mirror to human nature. And he suspected, I think, that the reflection might not be pretty. It might show just how much the situation dictates whether we lean towards kindness or cruelty.
So it started as this academic question about power.
Right, how we behave under its influence.
But it morphed pretty quickly into something much more tangible. Actually building a world.
Exactly. Zimbardo knew thinking wasn't enough. He had to create the environment, like a stage almost.
But one where the actors wouldn't necessarily know they were acting, or how much the role was taking over.
That seems to be the idea, for them to truly inhabit the roles.
Now, the ethical landscape back then, early 70s,
Yeah.
it was different, wasn't it?
Oh, very different. Oversight was much looser. The whole concept of informed consent, as we understand it now, was still evolving.
There was maybe a sense that, for important discoveries, some participant discomfort might be acceptable.
Sort of. Especially with the Cold War backdrop. Understanding human behavior felt strategically important, national security applications and all that.
Which is how the funding came about, from the military.
Yes, the U.S. Office of Naval Research provided funding. They were very interested in authority, discipline, stress in confined spaces.
Like submarines or POW camps.
Exactly. Zimbardo's idea of simulating prison psychology offered a way to study those things in a controlled way.
So the plan itself seemed straightforward enough on paper.
Relatively. Build a mock prison in the basement of Jordan Hall at Stanford. No windows.
Recruit volunteers via newspaper ad. College students mostly.
Right. Young, white, middle class predominantly. $15 a day for a study on prison life.
They screened them, picked 24 who seemed stable.
70 applied. They picked 24. Crucially, they had to seem mentally sound.
And then the roles, assigned completely by chance.
A coin toss. Heads you're a guard, tails you're a prisoner. Random assignment.
And the key thing here, almost no instructions.
Very few specifics. Guards, maintain order, no physical violence. That was about it. They had to figure out the rest.
Prisoners, comply. Personal stuff taken away, given numbers, locked up, constant surveillance.
And Zimbardo himself, right there as the superintendent, embedded.
So this wasn't about studying people with pre-existing issues.
No, not at all. It was about the average person. What happens when ordinary folks are put in this extraordinary situation, given these powerful roles, and just let loose within that structure?
Did Zimbardo anticipate how intense it could become? The blurring lines between researcher and participant?
It's hard to say for sure. He clearly believed it would yield valuable insights. But the danger of him being inside the experiment as superintendent, that was a huge risk.
Were there warnings? Did colleagues raise flag?
And there were some quiet concerns, yes. about the psychological safeguards or lack thereof, and about Zimbardo's dual role. Could he really be objective?
But the momentum was there.
Yeah, the university was supportive, there was intellectual excitement, the train had left the station, so to speak.
The mock prison opens, August 1971. And the core theme is really dehumanization.
How easily people can be stripped of identity, treated as less than human.
And the big unknown was just how fast that could happen.
How quickly the roles would consume the people, and maybe even consume the researcher himself.
So every research project needs backing. Practical stuff.
Money, space, time. The Stanford experiment was no different.
And the context, the Cold War, it really shaped what kind of psychology got funded, didn't it?
Hugely. Understanding and influencing behavior felt vital then. Psychology became almost strategic.
Which explains the Navy interest.
Right. The Office of Naval Research. They weren't after abstract philosophy, they wanted practical data.
How people handle confinement, how hierarchies work under pressure, discipline in places like submarines.
Exactly. Zimbardo's proposal fit that bill perfectly, even if it was framed academically. It offered a model to study institutional control.
But Zimbardo had deeper motivations too, right? Beyond the practical applications.
Definitely. He was fundamentally driven by this idea of how systems shape people, how even good people can be corrupted by the situation.
His big thing was situational vulnerability. Not about inherent good or evil, but how the context, the expectations, the role, how powerful that is.
He really wanted to demonstrate that, prove it in a way.
And let's be honest, there was probably some ambition involved too.
Likely, yes. A study this provocative. It was bound to get attention, spark debate, raise his profile. Milgram's study had already shown the impact of controversial findings.
So the mock prison wasn't just a lab, it was a statement.
A simulation, a statement, a challenge, maybe even a career move, all rolled into one.
But also incredibly risky. A gamble on human malleability.
And the potential for darkness to surface, even in normal people under these conditions.
In the funding papers, it sounded so clinical.
An experiment in the psychology of imprisonment. Very neutral.
But it was really a deep dive into the loss of self.
Yeah. And crucially, there was no safety net, no external stop button planned, only Zimbardo's own judgment.
And the kicker is, his judgment would become part of the experiment itself.
Exactly. Unforeseen, perhaps, but that's what happened.
It all kicked off so simply, didn't it? Just a flyer.
Just a piece of paper, black and white, posted around Stanford and the local area.
Very basic message. Male college students needed for psychological study of prison life. $15 per day for 1 to 2 weeks.
No mention of the fake arrests, the intensity, the psychological toll, just the basics.
And it got a decent response.
70 applicants, mostly students, some recent grads, drawn by curiosity, maybe the money. A mix of things.
But Zimbardo's team screened them carefully.
Very carefully. They wanted normal, stable individuals. No history of mental illness, arrests, no strong political leanings. Kind of aiming for the average.
Representative of the student body at the time.
Right. They ended up selecting 24 young men, mostly white, middle class, American, reflecting Stanford's demographics then, strangers to each other.
And then came the coin toss, the moment that split them.
Yeah, that random assignment. Heads dot guard, tails prisoner. Simple, arbitrary, but utterly decisive. 1 minute they're equals, the next. Unequal roles.
And crucially, no training, no scripts.
Deliberately vague. Zimbardo felt the ambiguity was where the power lay. Guards just told to keep order, no physical violence allowed, prisoners told to comply.
But what did order or comply even mean in that context?
That was left open. The whole point was to see how they'd perform these identities, how quickly they'd inhabit the roles.
Zimbardo expected the situation itself to teach them how to act.
That was the hypothesis, that the environment, the power imbalance, would guide their behavior.
How did the participants see it initially? Like a game?
Probably something like that, an adventure, a temporary role play, maybe some excitement. They likely couldn't grasp how real it would feel.
They weren't just volunteers anymore.
No, they were the raw material for this system, a system that was about to demand they transform.
So this place in the basement,
Yeah.
it wasn't legally a prison.
Not at all. No external laws applied in the same way, but from day one, it acted like its own world, with its own rules, its own logic, set apart.
How did they actually build it?
It was pretty minimalist but precise. In this windowless basement hallway at Jordan Hall, they put up temporary walls, steel-barred doors for 3 small cells.
Like tiny cages.
Pretty much. A closet became solitary, the hole. The hallway was the yard, rooms for guards, a warden's office.
And surveillance was key.
Oh, yeah. Cameras everywhere, a PA system, a control room behind a one-way mirror so researchers could watch unseen.
Creating this totally closed system. Cut off.
And the lighting was constant, no daylight cues. It messed with time, reinforced that the prison's internal clock was all that mattered.
The uniforms, though, they seem incredibly symbolic.
Hugely symbolic, and deliberately so.
Yeah.
Guards got khaki shirts and trousers, looks authoritative, right?
Yeah, military-ish.
Wooden batons, a symbol of enforcement power. And those mirrored sunglasses.
Why were they so important?
They prevented eye contact, hid the guards' expressions, made them anonymous, unreadable masks. Psychologically, that's massive for de-individuation.
And the prisoners' outfits, designed for the opposite effect.
Exactly. Shapeless smocks, ID numbers front and back instead of names, no underwear that's a subtle degradation, rubber sandals.
And a chain.
The light chain around one ankle, a constant physical reminder of being captive.
So these weren't just costumes, they were psychological tools.
Absolutely. Designed to accelerate identity stripping, role adoption. The uniform tells you how to act, how you're seen.
Even the physical space played a role.
Low ceilings, narrow halls. It felt cramped, disorienting. No natural light, no clocks, detached from reality.
So the basement wasn't just a basement anymore.
It became this distilled concept, a pressure cooker for the psyche.
And the simulation didn't start with a bell or anything.
No, it just began. When the first prisoners were brought in, the door closed, and that was it. The outside world faded.
And maybe the most powerful walls weren't the physical ones.
Definitely not. The walls were going up inside their heads.
That coin toss.
Yeah.
It seems so casual for something with such huge consequences.
Right. No big ceremony. But it changed everything for those 24 guys.
They'd all passed the screening, agreed to the study, knew it was a simulation.
Signed the forms, met the staff, probably a mix of nerves and excitement.
And then just flip a coin. Heads, guard. Tails, prisoner.
Random, final. No appeals.
What were the immediate reactions?
Mixed. Guards often showed this, like awkward pride, smiles, shrugs, maybe some unspoken buzz about having authority. Prisoners looked less sure.
Generous.
Naturally, yeah. Prisoner probably still felt abstract, but you could see a shift. The equality was gone.
The coin toss looked objective, fair.
Which kind of masked the reality, didn't it? The fairness of the process hid the fact that the roles were about to dictate everything.
And their experiences split immediately after that.
Instantly. Guards told to report early, get uniforms, instructions. Staff treated them differently. Prisoners, they faced isolation, the whole arrest and booking simulation.
So the power difference wasn't imposed by an outsider. It grew from within.
It was designed to be lived, to emerge from the structure and the roles themselves.
Which ties back to Zimbardo's core belief.
That context shapes behavior. Identity can be overwritten by the environment, by the role you're playing.
So from that moment, they weren't just themselves anymore.
No, they were the role, guard or prisoner. And the line between who they were and how they acted started blurring almost right away. The difference between belief and behavior, it vanished incredibly fast.
That quiet Sunday morning in Palo Alto, it was definitely deceptive.
Yeah, because for those guys assigned the prisoner role, the simulation didn't start in the basement. It started at their front doors.
With real police cars showing up.
Real local cops, yeah, volunteering to make it feel authentic, and crucially, no warning given to the prisoners.
Imagine that. Being arrested at home in front of family, neighbors, for crimes you didn't commit.
Armed robbery, assault.
Yeah.
Serious stuff. They went through the whole routine rights, read, pat down, real handcuffs.
Put in a squad car, taken to the station, booked, photographed, fingerprinted.
Only after all that were they told, okay, this is part of the experiment.
But the damage was already done, psychologically speaking.
Oh, absolutely. The line between simulation and real life obliterated. The humiliation, the confusion, the fear, those were real emotions, not acting.
The ride to Stanford must have been awful. Then into the basement.
Still blindfolded. Then the stripping down process began again, sprayed with disinfectant.
Like they were contaminated.
Stripped naked, given the uniform smock, no underwear, sandals, stocking cap for the shaved head look.
And the ankle chain.
The ankle chain. And numbers instead of names.
The message was clear. You're not you anymore.
Right. Disobey, get punished, comply, maybe get rewarded. Calmly delivered, but unmistakable. The volunteers were gone. Prisoners had arrived.
While upstairs, on campus, life just went on as normal.
Totally oblivious to this intense reality being constructed right below them. The simulation had started with force, setting a grim stage.
That whole process in the basement, it was about dismantling who they were, wasn't it?
Systematically. Taking away their names was step one.
Because a name means history, connection.
Individuality. A number just categorizes you, disconnects you. It's a classic dehumanization tactic.
The uniforms reinforce that. Ill-fitting, uncomfortable.
Designed to strip dignity. The stocking caps, the sandals, no underwear. All contributing.
And that chain, always there.
A constant, subtle reminder. You are confined.
The initial degradation, as Zimbardo called it, wasn't physical violence, though.
Not at first. It was procedural. Barked orders, impersonal tone, using numbers only, waking them up at odd hours, disrupting sleep, asserting control.
Prisoner 86112. He talked about feeling detached really quickly.
Yeah, he said within the first day, he started forgetting who he was outside, flinching when his number was called, avoiding eye contact, becoming deferential.
Not a conscious choice, but happening to him.
Zimbardo called it role internalization. Basically, the self starts to erode, replaced by the imposed identity.
And the guards, they were changing too.
Simultaneously, the uniform seemed to change their posture, the baton added confidence, and the sunglasses.
Created distance, allowed them to command without connecting.
Exactly. Made dehumanization easier.
And the prisoners mostly just went along with it at first?
Largely, yes. Not much resistance initially, more like compliance, maybe born out of confusion and the sheer weirdness of it all.
But that compliance was significant.
It was the first step towards a deeper submission, not just to the guards, but to the whole reality of the prison they were creating together. The roles were already taking hold.
So the guards had this vague instruction: maintain order, no rulebook.
Right. That ambiguity was intentional. How would they define order? How would they enforce it?
And the first real test came that evening, with roll call.
Yeah. Line them up outside the cells, recite your number, loud and clear.
Initially, it was a bit messy.
Fumbling, mumbling, nervous laughter, still felt a bit unreal, maybe?
How did the guards react?
Immediately clamped down. Repeated orders, sterner tone, demanded precision. Introduced small punishments for errors, push-ups.
Signaling zero tolerance for mistakes.
Absolutely. No flexibility. Their authority was absolute from the get-go.
And the prisoners complied.
They did. Not necessarily out of intense fear yet, but more from understanding that resistance would have consequences, even if unknown. Easier to just obey.
That moment of compliance.
Yeah.
It must have been powerful for the guards.
Hugely transformative. It showed them their authority worked. That effectiveness became a huge motivator.
So they started getting bolder.
Started coordinating, inventing routines, asserting themselves more confidently, patrolling more purposefully, using prisoner numbers, even among themselves, developing nicknames.
Even though none of them had this kind of authority experience before.
None at all. The role was shaping them rapidly.
And the prison atmosphere shifted.
Yeah, the surreal feeling hardened into routine. Guards controlled everything, eating, standing, sitting, talking. Every little thing required permission.
And the prisoners fell into line, quietly obedient.
That initial obedience was key. It showed that power doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs silent consent to take root.
Once authority is granted, it rarely just sits there, does it?
No, it tends to expand, and that's what happened with the guards in the days after those first roll calls.
They moved beyond just enforcing basic rules.
Definitely. Their initial caution faded as the system rewarded their certainty and the prisoners kept complying. They got bolder.
Started introducing small humiliations.
Yeah, things disguised as discipline, making prisoners chant their numbers endlessly, push-ups, sometimes with another prisoner sitting on their back. Felt like hazing at first.
But it escalated.
It did. Guards started designing their own punishments, delaying meals, revoking toilet privileges, interrupting sleep for 3 a.m. roll calls, degrading chores.
Like what?
Forcing them to sing silly songs, recite nonsense, mimic each other, sometimes smearing food, making up arbitrary rules like needing permission to blink, apparently.
And this creativity and cruelty, it just emerged.
Organically, it seems. Guards almost subtly competed to elaborate their control. Different styles emerged too, the silent intimidator, the openly sadistic one.
The famous John Wayne persona.
Right, playing these archetypes of tyranny.
And the sunglasses became more than just props.
They became shields, allowing guards to act without feeling seen, without facing the human consequences directly.
What about Zimbardo as superintendent?
His presence, often just observing silently, essentially validated the guards' behavior. His lack of intervention seemed like authorization.
How were the prisoners reacting to this escalation?
Withdrawal, hypocompliance. Clear signs of psychological distress were starting to show, but mainly adaptation, not rebellion.
So the first big takeaway was already clear.
Unambiguous. Ordinary people, given unchecked power, don't just enforce rules, they start creating harsher ones.
Let's talk about prisoner 8612, Douglas Corpy.
Yeah, he was one of the initial volunteers, screened as normal, thoughtful, stable, an ideal participant on paper.
But he unraveled fast.
By day 2, he started with defiance, refusing food, mocking guards, questioning orders, trying to resist the role.
How did the guards handle that?
They tightened control specifically on him, extended time in the hole, shouting, ridicule, waking him up repeatedly. They isolated him. Other prisoners became wary of him, fearing collective punishment.
And his resistance turned into something else.
Panic. Uncontrollable weeping, begging to leave. He famously screamed at Zimbardo, thinking it was still part of the test. You can't leave. You can't quit.
That must have been a shock.
Mm-hmm.
The line between experiment and reality dissolving right there.
Absolutely. He clearly felt he was losing his mind, that the role was consuming him.
Zimbardo hesitated.
Apparently so. Torn between being the researcher gathering data and the superintendent managing the prison, and just being a person witnessing distress.
Corpy was eventually released.
Yes, let go for health reasons on the second day. His breakdown was the first major rupture in the simulation's facade. It wasn't harmless.
How did Zimbardo react to Corpy leaving?
Fearfully, it seems. He worried Corpy might come back, try to liberate the others. He actually increased security, brought in reinforcements, reorganized the guard shifts.
So the experiment itself started acting defensively, like a real prison anticipating trouble.
Exactly. The logic of the prison wasn't just affecting the participants, it was taking hold of Zimbardo himself. The study was no longer just observing behavior, it was behaving.
Corpy got out of the basement, but the experience stayed with him.
Undoubtedly. The role, the breakdown, it left a lasting mark.
Did Corpy's breakdown cause the system to collapse?
No, quite the opposite. It seemed to reinforce the guards' belief that strict control was necessary. It calcified the system.
So things got even tighter after he left.
Yes. Guards reorganized, intensified surveillance, more arbitrary roll calls, more collective punishment for minor individual infractions.
And the punishments became stranger.
More degrading. Cleaning toilets with bare hands, simulating sexual acts, hours of just standing motionless chanting nonsense.
There was laughter, apparently.
But only among the guards. The prisoners grew quieter, moving from confusion to a kind of resignation. Some clung rigidly to the rules, others seemed to just detach emotionally.
Like the prisoner who just stopped eating or moving.
Yeah, just sat there, vacant-eyed, trembling, clear signs of distress.
And Zimbardo and the team, still just observing.
Mostly, yes. Watching from behind the mirror, taking notes, filming. Non-intervention had become almost a doctrine by this point.
Were the prisoners absorbing the system too?
In some ways, yes. They started referring to each other by number. When new prisoners were introduced later, the existing ones would sometimes initiate them into the routines, the rituals of submission.
So the system became self-replicating, internalized.
It wasn't just experimental anymore, it was experiential. The guards weren't just playing roles, the prisoners weren't just simulating submission, and the researchers, they were observing something they didn't fully control anymore.
The prison started as a question.
And it had become a condition, a state of being.
After prisoner 8612's breakdown, did the other prisoners think about resisting together?
It seems that moment actually had the opposite effect. Instead of sparking rebellion, it fostered fear, if that could happen to him.
So they fragmented, turned inward.
Exactly. Zimbardo's team noted it clinically. Group identification dissolved, conversations became sparse, trust eroded, eyes were kept lowered.
And the guards used that.
They exploited it, using collective punishment, but sometimes applying it selectively, subtly turning prisoners against each other.
Like the incident with the hunger striker.
Right. Prisoner 416, he refused to eat. The guards offered the other prisoners a deal. And lift up your blankets for the night and we'll let him out of solitary.
And they did it. They gave up their blankets.
Most of them did. Which showed how solidarity had completely broken down. 416's resistance became a burden to them, not an inspiration.
Wow. So they were essentially policing each other.
To some extent, informants emerged, initially subtle, then more open, prisoners correcting each other, echoing the guards' language.
There's that quote from one prisoner scolding another, "You're making it worse for the rest of us."
Yeah, indicating they'd internalized the system's logic. believed in it almost.
Even the guards started calling them inmates.
Which signifies that shift, doesn't it? The fiction becoming reality and ideology taking hold.
No leaders emerged among the prisoners, no alliances.
None, just roles and this enforced loneliness. The isolation became psychological. Power reproduced itself through that disconnection. It effectively cut off any chance of organized resistance.
By day 5, violence wasn't just random acts.
It became almost policy, habitual. Guards took initiative, didn't always seek Zimbardo's approval for punishments anymore.
And the punishments got more elaborate.
Yes. Push-ups became hours of exertion. Standing for minutes became standing for hours. Forced toilet cleaning, scrubbing floors, humiliating songs.
The rhythm changed, too. Less predictable.
Exactly. Arbitrary cycles of giving and taking away privileges, unpredictable meals, rest periods. It wasn't just punishing disobedience, it was punishing with uncertainty, aiming for disorientation.
How did that affect the prisoners?
They shifted from cautious to defeated, anticipating commands, defaulting to submission even when rules were unclear or contradictory.
Is that learned helplessness?
That's the term, yes. They seemed to reach a point where resistance felt futile. Only endurance remained.
And Zimbardo still didn't step in.
His role as superintendent had blurred his perspective. He saw the guards' actions as data, the prisoners' distress as transformation, not necessarily as cruelty needing intervention.
Were there no objections from his team?
Some quiet concerns were raised about the suffering, but the experiment's momentum just seemed too strong by then.
The guards even started designing reward systems.
Yes, setting prisoners against each other, designating cell leaders, staging mock trials. The goal wasn't just control anymore. It was actively shaping behavior.
They weren't just keeping order, they were manufacturing it.
And the prisoners adapted by receding, personalities thinning out, moving carefully, just waiting for the next instruction. It wasn't a simulation by then, it was a prison.
Tell us more about prisoner 416, the hunger striker.
He was actually a replacement participant, brought in later. He watched the system operate for a bit, then quietly refused to eat.
Just a simple refuse.
Said, "I'm on a hunger strike." But in that context, it wasn't just about food. It was seen as defiance against the system itself.
A threat to the illusion of total submission.
Exactly. The guards reacted swiftly, put him in the hole until he ate.
And then they made that offer to the others. Give up blankets to get him out.
And the fact that they complied, that they chose their own comfort over solidarity with him, that was deeply revealing.
It showed how effectively the system could alienate resistance.
Right. When 416 came out of the hole, he wasn't welcomed back as a hero. He was seen as someone who was causing trouble for everyone.
So even his act of refusal was neutralized.
But absorbed by the system through alienation. Zimbardo himself later admitted being troubled, not just by the strike, but by how the other prisoners turned on 416.
It showed the prisoners enforcing the guards' logic.
Which was an unexpected and deeply unsettling demonstration of the system's power. Control doesn't always need to crush resistance. Sometimes it just needs to isolate it.
The experiment ended abruptly on day 6. What triggered that?
A visitor, Christina Maslach. She was a young psychologist, also Zimbardo's partner at the time. She came to observe, expecting an academic exercise.
But she saw something different.
Very different. It was the evening of the 6th day. She went down into the basement. The harsh lights, the smell, the silence.
What did she witness?
She saw the prisoners, quiet, heads down, the guards commanding with their mirrored glasses and batons. It felt real, she said later. Too real, not like acting.
Was there a specific incident?
She saw guards forcing a prisoner to repeat his number over and over until his voice cracked, what other guards laughed.
And she confronted Zimbardo.
She turned to him, probably expecting some kind of research explanation, but found him acting like a calm, almost proud superintendent overseeing his domain.
What did she say?
Something simple but incredibly powerful. What you're doing to these boys is wrong.
How did Zimbardo react?
Stunned. Defensive at first. Argued it was just an experiment, valuable data.
But she persisted.
Yes. She asked him to look at their faces, not the data. See the people, not the roles.
And that broke through.
It seems so. For the first time in 6 days, someone from the outside named what was happening not as methodology, but as harm. It pierced his detachment, his rationalizations.
He saw what he had become within the experiment.
Yes, and he terminated the study immediately. That night.
That moment itself is powerful, isn't it? How easily moral blindness can set in when you think you're just doing your job.
It's a stark reminder. The physical experiment ended, but that ethical turning point lingers.
So the study stops. What happened right after? Uniforms off, numbers gone.
Lights dimmed, doors opened. But relief wasn't the first thing people felt. It was more complex.
They had a debriefing session. Guards and prisoners together.
Yes, which must have been incredibly awkward. Unspoken tension, avoided eye contact, prisoners looking down, some nervous laughter.
What do the guards say? How do they explain their actions?
Mostly surprised at how easy control had been. Some admitted enjoying the power, but many insisted they were just going along, playing the role. Little sense of personal responsibility generally, not identifying as cruel.
And the prisoners.
Confusion, fear, exhaustion, feeling invisible. Some said they'd genuinely forgotten they could just leave. Talked about how the identity imposed by the system just took over.
There was a lot of denial, trying to frame it as just a simulation.
A strong need to distance themselves. Yeah, it was an act, a test. To avoid confronting the uncomfortable truths about what they'd done or what had been done to them and what they were capable of.
But the recordings showed otherwise.
The footage captured the transformations, changes in posture, tone of voice, the look in their eyes. Subtle, maybe, but real shifts.
Did Zimbardo watch the tapes afterwards?
He did, and he began to realize the extent of his own role in enabling the harm. Seeing himself laugh inappropriately, justify things instead of intervening. He called it a failure of oversight, a necessary, if painful, awakening.
The participants went back to their lives, but not unchanged.
No. The experiment had entered them. It left this lingering question about who they had been in that basement and who they might become under different circumstances.
Zimbardo himself. He became a character in his own drama.
Inadvertently, yes. He started as the detached scientist, but the role of superintendent took over.
Did he acknowledge his complicity quickly?
It seems to have been a gradual realization, spurred by feedback like Maslach's, and by reviewing the raw footage. He recognized he'd ignored distress, prioritized the experiment over the participants' well-being.
Allowed degradation in the name of discovery.
What troubled him most, he later said, wasn't necessarily active sadism, but his own indifference at times.
How did he talk about it publicly?
Initially, quite defensively, but over time, more nuance emerged. He acknowledged the ethical failings, but consistently framed it as a powerful lesson about how systems create harmful behavior.
The Lucifer Effect, his book title. The idea of the bad barrel corrupting the good apples.
Exactly. He became almost an apostle of that insight, speaking widely, consulting on cases like Abu Ghraib, arguing situational forces are paramount.
But there's still ambiguity about his own role beneath those explanations.
Some critics argue that, yes, but undeniably, he uncovered something profound about the power of context. And he also made a difficult personal discovery about his own susceptibility to the system's pull.
His intervention was late, but it did happen. The debate continues. Did the knowledge justify the cost?
That's the crux of it. Zimbardo remains this complex figure, maybe a visionary in some ways, but also a cautionary tale. His reckoning was both professional and deeply internal.
The experiment really forces us to ask, what does it even mean to be oneself?
Right. It showed just how permeable, how provisional the self can be under pressure, even in people pre-screened for stability.
And this erosion wasn't necessarily due to, extreme trauma, but the structure itself.
That's the key insight from social psychology that the experiment seemed to demonstrate so vividly. Situational forces, institutional cues, the uniforms, the numbers, the surveillance, the power imbalance, they can overwrite identity incredibly quickly and deeply.
The guards didn't just follow orders, they created oppressive routines. Dehumanization seemed to bubble up from the environment.
Psychologists use a few frameworks to understand this. There's de-individuation, losing self-awareness in a group, helped by the sunglasses and the shared role.
Okay.
There's role assimilation, internalizing the behaviors the environment teaches you are appropriate for your role.
And cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, reducing the tension between your actions, being harsh, and your self-image, being a good person, by redefining your actions as necessary duty within the role.
The implication is unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the self isn't as stable as we like to think.
Very. It resonates with ideas like Hannah Arendt's banality of evil, how terrible things can arise not from monstrous intent, but from ordinary people obeying orders within dehumanizing structures.
So the experiment wasn't about who we are in extreme moments, but how quickly we can become something else.
Precisely.
Every experiment asks us a question, but every ethical one needs limits.
And in 1971, those limits were fuzzy, to say the least. The regulatory framework we have now just didn't exist then.
Zimbardo's dual role was a major ethical problem, right? Investigator and superintendent.
Hugely problematic. He was embedded in the very system he was studying, which compromised his objectivity and his ability to prioritize participant welfare. He interpreted suffering as data.
When does role play become entrapment? When is consent no longer truly informed or voluntary?
Those are the crucial questions. Informed consent isn't a one-off signature. It should be ongoing. By day 2 or 3, many prisoners clearly didn't feel free to leave. Some resorted to extreme distress just to get out.
It was science exercising power.
And the structure lacked safeguards. No independent monitor, no mandatory check-ins, no external oversight with the power to stop it.
Stanford became a landmark case, didn't it? Influencing ethical reforms.
Absolutely. It was a major catalyst for strengthening institutional review boards, IRBs, and developing stricter protocols. A more anticipatory understanding of potential harm became standard.
Zimbardo has argued the study was a necessary shock for reform.
He has. But that doesn't erase the harm caused, or the paradox of a study about unchecked power becoming a demonstration of unchecked power by the researcher.
The simulation had real consequences and a responsibility to prevent future harm.
That became the ethical imperative.
A cornerstone of scientific credibility is replication. Can the results be repeated?
And that's a major issue for the Stanford Prison Experiment. It's never been successfully replicated.
Why not? What were the methodological weaknesses?
It was quite loose, actually. No standardized procedures for the guards, inconsistent ways of measuring behavior, the duration was indeterminate, and it was stopped based on an emotional intervention, not preset criteria.
Critics later raised questions about guard coaching, Zimbardo's influence.
Yes. Subsequent analyses suggested guards might have been subtly encouraged towards toughness. Questions arose about how much agency the prisoners really lacked, or if some were playing to expectations.
And that 2001 study is suggesting volunteers for prison studies might already be more aggressive.
Right, raising questions about the initial participant pool's representativeness.
What about the BBC prison study in 2002?
That was a partial replication by Reicher and Haslam. It yielded very different results. Prisoners became organized, challenged the guards. There was no automatic slide into tyranny. It suggests that maybe tyranny isn't inevitable, but depends on social identification and leadership.
And then Thibault Letexier's archival research in 2018.
That was quite damaging. Letexier found evidence suggesting significant guard coaching and elements of staging, concluding the study was methodologically flawed and its conclusions perhaps overstated, even partly fabricated.
So it shifted the view from empirical evidence to something else.
Psychological theater, perhaps? A powerful dramatization of potential dynamics, but not necessarily rigorous proof of an inevitable process.
That's a paradox, isn't it? Its scientific flaws versus its massive cultural impact.
Exactly. Its power lies in the unforgettable story, its resonance, more than its scientific purity. It's now seen less as definitive truth in social psychology, more as a potent, if flawed, parable.
Maybe its enduring power comes from how much we wanted to believe its simple, stark message.
That's certainly part of the ongoing debate.
Perhaps the most disturbing legacy isn't the experiment itself, but what it mirrors in the real world.
Zimbardo always emphasized that structure over individual pathology. Look at the system.
Real prisons are the obvious parallel. Overcrowding, dehumanization, power hierarchies. Abuse is tragically common.
The institutional logic often facilitates it. Similar dynamics appear in military settings, too.
Abu Ghraib being the chilling example, Zimbardo himself drew that parallel, using his bad barrel argument.
Right, but it extends beyond prisons and military. Think about police forces, schools, fraternities, workplaces, even hospitals. Any structure with unequal power, demands for obedience, and limited scrutiny can potentially foster similar dynamics.
Institutions aren't neutral playgrounds. They shape us.
They mold behavior,
Yeah.
often rewarding traits that can lead to dehumanization if unchecked.
So dismissing Stanford as just artificial misses the point.
Completely. Its power is illustrating these patterns that persist in everyday structures all around us.
It prompts us to look at the roles we play, the systems we're in, and ask about their effects, without needing a basement simulation.
Exactly. What roles are we performing and what's the cost?
Few scientific studies lodge themselves in public consciousness like Stanford did.
It just doesn't fade away. It's both cautionary and captivating. Still debated, still taught, still inspiring films.
Why does it endure? Is it that tension between the flawed method and the profound meaning people draw from it?
I think that dissonance is key. the ethical questions versus the insights it seemed to offer,
And Zimbardo himself became the chief narrator of its meaning.
consistently emphasizing the power of roles, the power of systems. He shifted from scientist to activist, advocating for prison reform, promoting ideas like everyday heroism.
Though skepticism about his interpretations and motivations remains.
Yes, the legacy is complex. The experiment also lives on in the public imagination as this simplified, dramatic story. Its sharp edges got smoothed out in the retelling.
The clear narrative versus the messier reality of anecdotal data, unquantified effects, behavior shaped by expectation.
Right. So its enduring power might lie less in its scientific certainty and more in its ability to force uncomfortable questions about responsibility, participation, the systems we build, and the stories we tell ourselves about them.
Zimbardo's legacy, like the study itself, remains unresolved.
Deeply unresolved.
While Stanford wasn't the last ethically dubious study, it was a major turning point.
It helped ensure future research would be different. Psychology as a field learned hard lessons about power, responsibility, the limits of inquiry.
The ethical fallout directly fueled the rise of stricter IRBs.
Absolutely. It accelerated their institutionalization and influence.
Yeah, so what are the requirements now for ethical research?
Anticipating harm, ensuring truly informed and revocable consent, treating participants with autonomy and dignity, independent oversight, it's a different world.
It's a philosophical shift too, isn't it? Protecting participants is paramount.
Honoring their humanity is central to the task now, not secondary to discovery.
Does that mean sensitive research or simulations can't happen?
Not necessarily, but the ethical calculations are far more complex and stringent. There's no neutral simulation. Every experimental setup carries an ethic.
Future research has to grapple with the ethics of context itself.
Protections, safe roles, the line between observation and complicity, recognizing harm before it happens. These aren't just bureaucratic hurdles, they're fundamental to good science.
A human-centered psychology that values reflection, care, and restraint.
That's the goal, and
Yeah.
Stanford, in its own troubling way, helped push the field in that direction.
We've covered a lot of ground today, diving deep into the Stanford Prison Experiment. It remains profoundly unsettling.
It really does. It started with that fundamental question, what makes good people do bad things? And it pointed powerfully towards the situation.
But as we've seen, the study itself is tangled in ethical knots and ongoing scientific debate about its methods and conclusions.
Absolutely. Its status as definitive proof is shaky, but its cultural power as a story, a warning, is undeniable.
And maybe the most crucial takeaway isn't just about prisons, simulated or real, but about the systems we all navigate every single day.
The workplaces, the online communities, the social groups, the roles we step into, sometimes without even realizing it.
It leaves you wondering, doesn't it? How much are the rules of the game and our own lives shaping who we are, how we treat others, maybe even limiting our own sense of agency or empathy?
That's the really provocative thought to sit with. Beyond Zimbardo, beyond Stanford, what invisible structures are influencing us right now?
A sobering question. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into some truly challenging source material.
Thank you. It's a story that certainly makes you think.